Good afternoon. Will the Standing Committee on Crown Corporations please come to order? Before the committee can proceed with the business before it, it must elect a chairperson. Are there any nominations? Emily Blasco.
I'd like to nominate MLA Loisel.
Emily Loisel has been nominated. Are there any other nominations? Hearing no other nominations, Emily Loisel, will you please take the chair?
Good afternoon. Our next item of business is the election of a vice chairperson. Are there any nominations? Emily Compton.
I nominate Emily Blasco.
Emily Blasco has been nominated. Are there any other nominations? Hearing no other nominations, Emily Blasco is elected vice chairperson. All right, this meeting has been called to consider the annual report of the Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries Corporation for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2024. At this time, I'd like to remind everyone that questions and comments must be put through the chair using third person as opposed to directly to members and representatives. Are there any suggestions from the committee as to how long we should sit this afternoon? Emily Compton.
I'm going to suggest 90 minutes.
Emily Compton has suggested 90 minutes. Emily King.
I was going to say 4 hours.
Emily King has suggested.
So make sure that we have to decide not against 90 minutes first.
Okay.
So how would we? 90. Good.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
So Emily King has suggested 4 hours. Emily Compton.
How about 2 hours?
Emily Compton has suggested 2 hours.
Is that agreed?
Is that agreed upon? Emily King.
Meet in the middle, Mr. Chair, at 3 hours.
Emily King has suggested 3 hours. Is that agreed? Emily Compton.
How about 2 hours, and then we revisit at 2 hours with the option to extend 30 minutes and then 30 minutes up to 3 hours.
Emily Compton has suggested 2 hours with the revisiting every 30 minutes up to 3 hours. Is that agreed upon?
2.5. Mr. Chair.
Emily King has suggested 2.5 hours. Is 2.5 hours agreed upon? Agreed, 2.5 hours. Thank you. Agreed and so ordered. Does the Honourable Minister wish to make an opening statement, and would he please introduce the officials in attendance?
Yes.
Minister Simard.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Standing Committee on Crown Corporations. As Minister responsible for liquor and lotteries, I am here this afternoon along with senior officials from Liquor and Lotteries to give a presentation on the results of the 2023-2024 fiscal year and to field questions from the members. I would like to welcome the following officials of the Corporation's Board and Executive: Jeff Traeger, Chair of the MBLL Board of Directors; Jerry Sewell, President and CEO of Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries; my Deputy Minister Mona Pandey, and Director of Ministerial Affairs Mike Kelly, who have joined me, as well as other staff. As attendees to the meeting will know, Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries business lines of gaming, cannabis, and liquor sales generate much-needed revenue for the provincial budget that is, in turn, used to deliver healthcare, education, and priorities. La Société des alcools et loteries gère beaucoup de finances pour le budget provincial pour les soins en santé, l'éducation et d'autres priorités. Notre gouvernement a donné un mandat aux sociétés des alcools et loteries pour être responsable pour les services de notre corporation et pour assurer que les communautés et les travailleurs sont supportés en livrant ces choses aux Manitobains. Our government has provided a mandate for liquor and lotteries to responsibly continue and to provide services of the Crown Corporation and to ensure that the communities and workers are supported in delivering customer needs. Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries employs many Manitobans in good public sector jobs, and we will ensure that Liquor and Lotteries maintains and even expands those operations to meet the demands of today and tomorrow. Notre futur est dans les mains certaines de notre président et notre conseil administratif. L'employé des sociétés des loteries et alcools sont des Manitobains et Manitobaines qui ont des très bons travails et nous allons assurer que ça maintient leur tien de la province au Manitoba. Liquor and Lotteries also has an important role in fostering an entrepreneurial environment for liquor production and positive spin-offs in job and business creation for our Manitoba economy. I will now turn to the presentation over to Jerry Sewell, President and CEO of Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries, with a question and answer to follow, should the chair be okay with that.
Absolutely. Oh. Does the critic of the official opposition have an opening statement before we move on to Mr. Sewell?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank the minister for giving us the opportunity.
I apologize, Emily King. The floor is yours. Mr. King.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, thanks for the opportunity for us to come here today and ask some questions and some discussion on the report for Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries. In my new role as a critic for this portfolio, I'm looking forward to getting educated and learning about the corporation. With me today, I have members Conrad Narth from La Vérendrye and Kelvin Gertzen from Steinbach with us as opposition, and they'll get an opportunity to ask some questions as well. MLA Narth, of course, has previously in this portfolio before me and has some definitely has some knowledge of the MBLL, so we'll give him an opportunity to ask some questions as well as MLA Gertzen. So just keep my comments short, seeing as how we cut our time down to what we've got lots of material here we want to get through and lots of questions. So I look forward to the answers. Thank you.
We thank the member. Just a quick reminder that we should not be using last names, but more so titles, or first names, sorry, but more so titles. Does the representative from Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries Corporation wish to make an opening statement? Mr. Sewell?
So good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to address you today. On behalf of our nearly 3,000 employees, I'm pleased to provide you today with an overview of Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries business operations and activities for the fiscal year 23-24. This past year, we welcomed aboard a new set of board members and began working on the new mandate that was set out by the province of Manitoba that we received in December. Again, our corporation is focused on enriching the lives of Manitobans and making the greatest impact it can on the economic and social well-being of our province. In fiscal 2023-24, we introduced a new corporate vision statement which would help guide our strategic initiatives and know that all our business decisions are aligned with that particular vision. Our vision is to be consistently the largest contributor to the province of Manitoba. And I know that, over the last number of years, that's a fair statement to say, is that, we have been one of the largest contributors to the province of Manitoba. Our staff are not only proud to give back to the people of Manitoba through the general revenues, but as well, it's important that we give back through social responsibility, our growing community support program, and our focus on environmental stewardship. I'm proud to share that through the hard work and dedication of our employees in fiscal year 2023 and 24, we contributed through $1.69 billion in revenue, $732.5 million to support the province in the important programs like healthcare, social services, infrastructure, and education. We take great pride in knowing that every dollar of profit remains in the province of Manitoba. This return last year was $64 million better than budget, or our budget of $668 million. So it's a 9.6% increase over the planned budget. Looking at the performance of our three lines of business, the gaming and entertainment segment accounted for 52% of our net income back to the province. Since the pandemic, We've continued to see year-over-year revenue growth in the casinos of Winnipeg. Our revenues in the casinos grew by 7.3% and reached a record level of $246.2 million, contributing $89.9 million back to the province through net income. This growth was primarily driven by increased visitation into our casinos, as well as some of our efforts to expand and improve the gaming selection that's available to our consumers in the casino. We added 300 new slot machines into the gaming environment. Our lottery sales contributed $45.1 million to the province, reflecting a 15% decline compared to the previous year. Lottery forecasts are based on statistical modeling, so there's a lot of volatility in it, and we recognize that we are subject to these volatilities and roll patterns that really drive incremental sales when it comes to lottery products. In fiscal 23-24, we saw a significant decrease in those jackpot rolls. In a typical year, you would see 18 max jackpots achieved, and of course, starting those roll patterns, we only saw 7 in the last fiscal year. This negative impact was partially offset by a revision to the Lotto 649 game, adding what was called the gold ball feature to that, so that helped offset some of that decline. Manitoba's 900 plus retailers that we have in the province that sell lottery products earned $19 million in sales commissions and as well as in prize redemptions. For our online gaming environment, playnow.com, we take great pride in offering Manitobans a safe and regulated online gaming environment through PlayNow. This is the province's only legal online gaming platform. PlayNow generated $45.2 million in net income in fiscal 23-24, representing a 15% decrease from the previous year. Revenues were flat, but at the same time, this was impacted by increased expenditures related to protecting against the illegal market, so increased marketing and advertising, as well as we were impacted through the lottery sales decline because we sell lottery products online. Despite the year-over-year declines, when we came out of the pandemic and we saw the reopening of casinos and VLT land-based options that were out there, we did see a steady decline year over year as it related to online gaming revenues, which was expected, but we are still sitting 300% better than we were pre-pandemic as far as net income back to the province of Manitoba. Over that time, since we've established PlayNow, we've accumulated 150,000 player registrations, and this past summer we introduced a new online app that allows players to play sports on iOS devices. Looking at our VLT, or our video lottery terminal network of 6,715 VLTs, net income for fiscal 23-24 reached $199 million, which is an increase of 5.4% over the previous year. And again, this growth was really driven by a refresh of our VLT gaming environment, as well as it was complemented by the fact that we started to see improvements in the hours of operations for the various operators out there that house the VLT machines. We're seeing, again, those extended hours have made a difference. VLT site holders themselves earned $116.4 million in direct income from the VLT machines. $60 million of that went to First Nations VLT site holders. $53.1 million of that went to commercial operators in the province of Manitoba, and the other $3 million would have gone to the veterans or legions in the province of Manitoba. In fiscal 2023-24, our liquor operations celebrated 100 years of publicly managed liquor sales in the province of Manitoba. This line of business contributed $313.8 million in net income back to the province, which represented a $5.3 million decrease, or 1.7% decrease from the previous year. This decrease can be attributed to the labor disruption that we experienced last summer. In addition, we are experiencing, as all the other Canadian jurisdictions are, a decline in the consumption of beverage alcohol. So we saw last year 1.6% decline in the volume consumed in the province of Manitoba. So just over 100 million liters were sold last year in Manitoba. Despite these challenges, our liquor marts and our provincial retailer network continue to offer Manitobans exceptional selection, service, and convenience. And over the last fiscal year, we introduced more than 900 new products that were available not only to our liquor marts, but to the various retailers or private retailers in Manitoba. And basically, this expands our portfolio to over 13,000 products, representing more than 70 different countries. As the central order point for liquor deliveries, MBL distributes to over 1,800 commercial customers. And as I mentioned earlier, our distribution center shipped 100 million liters of alcohol across the province, representing a 1.6% decrease from the previous year. Again, this is a trend we're seeing, and monitoring closely as an organization as to, how do we potentially pivot around kind of these headwinds that we're facing. To serve our rural communities, our 57 Liquor Marts and 6 Liquor Mart Express stores are complemented with more than 400 private retail channel partners. We have 165 liquor vendors, 227 hotel beer vendors, 8 private wine store operators, and 3 duty-free operators. In fiscal 23-24, we reached a new specialty wine store agreement and extended our relationship with the Specialty Wine Store Association to 2035. At our Liquor Mart locations, we remain focused on balancing safety with convenience. Over the past year, we introduced some enhancements to our controlled entrance procedures, allowing us faster and smoother access for our customers to move them through the queue. In addition, the LGCA introduced some new ID types that will provide convenience for Manitobans to access our controlled access locations. That would include the Nexus card, the Manitoba Métis card, the firearms and acquisition license, and of course the Canadian Armed Forces licenses. It should be noted, we are proud of Manitoba's craft production industry. While many jurisdictions in Canada are seeing closures in the craft industry, we are healthy in Manitoba with 51 local craft manufacturers offering a diverse, locally made selection of craft beer, fine wine, ciders, and spirits, many of which are privately distributed through their channels, as well as through our liquor marts, liquor vendors, and beer vendors throughout Manitoba. Our cannabis line of business continues to experience strong and amazing year-over-year growth, both in the number of retail stores and annual revenues. In fiscal 23-24, net income reached $39.5 million back to the province, marking a 26% year-over-year increase, very similar to the previous year. This growth was primarily driven by the reduced cost of goods, the expansion of the retail network in Manitoba, and our growing product catalog with more than 3,000 items in the catalog for retailers to select from. The private retail channel network in Manitoba ended the year in that fiscal year at 205, which was a delta or a change of 28 stores. So there was incrementally 28 more stores in the province of Manitoba. And so we ended the year with 122 in Winnipeg, 83 in rural Manitoba. Currently, that 205 continues to grow. We're at 226 today. So again, evidence that the industry is strong and continue to thrive and grow in Manitoba. As the market evolves, we remain committed to our role to bringing in safe supply and distribution of non-medical cannabis. One of the most rewarding aspects of our job, obviously, at Manitoba Liquor Lottery is giving back to the communities in which we work or in which we live. Each year, Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries proudly supports a wide range of charitable, not-for-profit, and community organizations in a meaningful way, and that leaves a lasting impact. In fiscal 23-24, we provided $3.1 million in financial support, which represents a 1.7% million or $1.7 million increase, or 122% increase over the previous year. So we continue to kind of grow how we give back to Manitobans through community. In fiscal 23-24, we launched our MBLL.
Order. Mr. Sewell's time has expired. Is there leave to allow him to finish? Leave has been agreed. Mr. Sewell?
So again, in fiscal 23-24, we launched MBL Good Together. Again, a campaign to showcase our commitments and contributions back to the province of Manitoba. We feel it's important for Manitobans to know where the money goes and how we give back in the province of Manitoba. I'm proud to say this year, our community support team was honored in Toronto, where they received the prestigious Corporate Champions of the Arts Award. It's a prestigious award that's usually bestowed upon large national or global corporations, recognizing contributions to the arts and culture in Canada. And this award was, again, brought forward to our team. So we're very proud of that achievement. And again, it kind of reflects on kind of our giving back to community and how important it is and how we bring our money back to support Manitobans. As prescribed under the Liquor and Lotteries Corporation Act, 2% of our anticipated net income is mandated for social responsibility program. That could be broken into really 3 specific categories: consumer awareness, research, as well as direct funding. Our contribution to social responsibility was $13.4 million in the last fiscal year, and we only had a carry forward of $286,000. A lot of that kind of relates to timing. For our staff, we continue to focus on our efforts to create a culture of belonging where diversity is celebrated, inclusion is standard practice, and equality shapes our decision-making. This year, we launched a 3-year diversity, equity, and inclusion roadmap in the organization, and again, looking to drive the organization to new heights and respect for all people in Manitoba. We also unveiled the Truth and Reconciliation Roadmap, a living document that helps guide our journey to reconciliation, and we are grateful to be supported by an external body or our Indigenous advisory circle that we've assembled that help lead us and guide us forward as we navigate through the journey. And it's basically made up or representative of leaders and elders in the province of Manitoba. One of the highlights of the year I want to mention is that all 7 collective bargaining agreements were ratified in 23-24. In closing, I want to acknowledge the honor that it is to serve Manitobans, and I want to recognize the entire Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries team, all 3,000 of them. Without this, none of this would happen. The $732 million back to the province is really all in their hands and was on their backs to make that happen. We are proud of what we do for the province of Manitoba, and we take pride knowing that our revenues are returned to the province and stay in our province and support important government programs. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sewell. The floor is now open for questions. Mr. King.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to start with just some of the general performance of the corporation, and my question would be directed, of course, to the president and or the board chair. The total net revenue decreased from $740.9 million in 2022 to 2023 to $732.5 million in 23-24. What are the primary reasons for this decline, and what corrective actions are being taken? And what is the projected net revenue for the upcoming fiscal year, and what factors could influence that outcome?
Mr. Sewell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think when you look at a year-over-year comparison, I think there's a number of factors that came into play. There were decisions made on about a year ago, or in the last fiscal year, that we're carrying on forward, that have had year-over-year, I'll say, annualized impacts to the organization. I would suggest there was a new specialty wine store agreement that would have contributed to that. The last government introduced another adjustment to the reduced markup to support our local craft manufacturers in the province of Manitoba. The pause on First Nation gaming, or the gaming pause that was put in place, continues to hinder our ability to grow. In particular, we've basically put off opportunities to grow First Nations gaming in the province of Manitoba, which has hindered our bottom line growth. Our community support program was expanded under some direction of our past government and board, and so we've expanded that materially. As I mentioned, it grew 122%. And so some of those arrangements, or some of those decisions that were made, and again, all for the good of the province of Manitoba, again, have lasting effects on the bottom line.
Mr. King.
Thank you for that answer. I'm just going to move into the social responsibility part of the corporation. So what social responsibility initiatives are planned for the coming year? How much will you be spending on that? And are there any stats that correlate social responsibility initiatives with addictions rates? And how does MBLL measure the effectiveness of its social responsibility programming?
Mr. Sewell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in the upcoming fiscal year, again, the 2% is based on anticipated net income. So our budget for the current fiscal year is $715 million. So that would basically expected $14.3 million would be the expenditure. And again, it's always important to know that those funds are committed. So if there's any carryover or timing issues, where the funds can't be distributed, again, those funds are actually preserved. Kind of going forward. So again, the bulk of the money goes towards funding, and I would say that about just over $8 million of it will go to Shared Health and Marymount are the two primary beneficiaries when it comes to funding. Marymount would be the Yazoo project, or the Youth Addiction Stabilization Unit that we support, and then there's a variety of other important entities out there. Some of the other areas of focus is FASD related, so supports. So we've engaged with 4 or 5 different organizations that basically focus on FASD as kind of their primary focus of services or counseling provided. It's kind of where we're kind of directing or focusing our energies. Something to note is that there was a change when it comes to consumer awareness. That we had a lot more involved. We were a lot more involved, and there was more expenditure related to that. A lot of that's been transferred over to the LGCA. So we do provide some funding to the LGCA to support their efforts around consumer awareness campaigns and programming. The research is a smaller amount, so research would generally be in that $200,000 to $300,000 range annually. And again, it relates to programs where we partner up with universities on, studies and such that are related to either any of our 3 lines of business, whether it's cannabis, liquor, or beverage alcohol.
Mr. King.
What has been the impact of the strike, and what long-term impacts do you foresee, and what mitigating steps have been taken moving forward?
Mr. Sewell.
Again, any kind of labor disruption like that, has a major impact, as it relates to relationships between management and employee. And I think, the first order of business for us, post-strike, was for us to get out there and get in front of our people and help them understand what happened or what they became involved in. A lot of it is none of their doing. But at the same time, we want to make them understand, 2 things really. A, we're there to support them, that management does have their back, management cares about them, where sometimes that might come into question during labor disruptions. I think secondly, it's important for them after what they went through is to make them understand there's a future, that there are things to strive for, that there's a reason to work for this organization going forward, because again, it kind of leaves questions in their mind as to, hey, they don't care about me, they don't want to pay me for what I'm worth. And I think it's important for us to convey to them that they are an important, cog in the wheel. They're important in contributing back to the province of Manitoba. So I think, there's healing, and at the same time, there's also giving them hope as to, there's a bright future for them, as us being their employer.
Honorable Minister.
Yeah, and just to add to that, one of with the MBLL committing to a new strategic plan that had a vision to be the largest contributor to from the Crowns, was one about a mission and a vision to be pride in an organization that enriches the lives of Manitoba. And I think to the President's point of restoring a positive relationship with the employees allows for the organization or corporation to be able to have a workforce that can seize the feeling of what it means to be a proud worker in Manitoba. And being a part of the MBLL is something that they can look to as being a really positive experience. And harmony, consensus goes a long way in being able to proudly serve the people of Manitoba. And when you have retailers and you have a staff that are in direct relationships with the people they serve, who can take pride in the store, who can take pride in having good knowledge of the products they are helping people consume or enjoy. It goes to not only enhancing a workforce pride, but also a great experience for the people who are accessing the services. So I think the impact of the strike can be measured in the fact that there's a renewed vision, a renewed sense of pride in what working for the MBLL means.
Mr. King.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister and CEO, for those answers. Next question is, what do you foresee as the single greatest short-term risk and the single greatest long-term risks for the corporation?
Mr. Sewell.
Thank you for that question. I think when I think of kind of, the biggest headwinds facing our organization currently, obviously it would be the decline in beverage alcohol consumption. Consumers are drinking differently. They're drinking less. We know that, and this is not a Manitoba phenomena. This is something we're seeing, across all jurisdictions and globally. People are making healthier choices. People are more aware of and cognizant of, again, the stringent laws around drinking and driving, have obviously had an impact as well. And I think, the other thing that's happening out there is you're starting to see in media more messaging around, cancer care is a good example in Manitoba where, make your next drink non-alcoholic. You're starting to see, people making linkages between beverage alcohol and cancer, the U.S. Surgeon General, announcement not that long ago. So I think those things will weigh on consumers' minds and kind of, have them kind of question, the amount of beverage alcohol that they consume. And so I think as an organization, this is what we're focused on. How do we navigate through that? How can we pivot through that? But of course, always in a socially responsible way. I think the other area, where we have some headwinds that we're watching for would be on the online gaming side of it. So we're continuing to be faced with illegal operators or illegal actors out there, marketing their online gaming offerings to Manitobans. Again, a lot of Manitobans don't understand when they're playing on some of these online gaming sites that they are illegal. And I think the biggest implication to the province of Manitoba is that when people are playing on these online sites, you're funneling money into offshore companies. These monies that would be more rightfully served to serve Manitobans and give back to Manitobans are being funneled offshore. So there's that aspect of it, of moving money offshore. But I think the second aspect is consumer protection. So when you think about the risks that people don't understand about when you deposit money into an account in Antigua, Malta or Gibraltar, and you run into some difficulties with the organization, how you're going to get your money back. And there's lots of stories out there of that kind of happening. And so, we want to educate, the Manitoba consumer. We want to protect the Manitoba consumer, and we want to make sure that our money stay in the province of Manitoba to support the important government programs we have.
Honourable Minister.
Yeah, and just to add to some of the points made by the president here, I think the one of the most important things that MBLL is faced with is continuing to make sure that the MBLL is a strong corporation that continues to serve Manitobans. So to your previous question about the strike and its effects, it created an environment where that was at risk. And the more that you can strengthen the corporation in ensuring long-term stability, whether that's through employee contracts or whether that's through a strategic plan that looks to these headwinds that were mentioned before, and to be able to pivot to new lines of business or stabilize the consumer experience, or to enhance investment in Manitoban products, whether it's in craft beer, whether it's in craft liquor, whether it's in legal gaming. All of that contributes to an environment that makes the MBLL strong. So one of the challenges is how do we do this without weakening the strength of the corporation? And we know that the government and the province would be hard pressed to forego the significant revenues that are generated by the corporation.
Mr. King.
Mr. Chair, the next question will be just for the board question. Can you explain the board nomination process and how you ensure that board member skill sets fit the needs of the corporation?
Yeah, I can.
Honourable Minister.
Yeah. I'll make the first attempt. I think what we were able to do is conserve a number of board members who were there through previous iterations, but also having an eye and a diverse range of Manitoba experiences. And I think weighing the representation of the board members across the province, I think, was a paramount concern. But at the same time, creating an environment where, again, the stability of the MBLL remains paramount, and to continue on championing an all-of-Manitoban approach, balancing institutional memory, balancing new thinking, and balancing representation from not only one segment of society, but all of it. Okay.
Mr. Trigger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would also say that the selection of this particular board, in addition to what the minister said, includes a group of people that, first of all, do fully believe in the mission statement of Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries, but they're a very diverse group, and all of them bring different skill sets to the board. We have everything from social responsibility experts to financial experts, and we even have a previous board member who participated when Liquor and Lotteries merged, who heads up our Audit and Finance Committee, so someone with a lot of experience there. And I think it's a little unusual, but there were 2 board members that were kept on by this government that were appointed by the previous government, including the vice chair. And I think that just shows that the selection of the board members was specifically related to the merit and what they could bring to the board rather than any political affiliation.
Mr. King.
Thank you for that answer, Mr. Sol. And Mr. Chair, I'm just wondering if maybe the board chair or the president could list the board committees and who it is that sits on each committee, and do they hold any designation or relevant professional designations, such as a CPA or a CHRP?
Mr. Traeger.
Sure. I can tell you that there are 3 standing committees of the board. So there's the Human Rights and Compensation Committee, the Strategic Planning and Governance Committee, and the Audit and Finance Committee. And all of the current 8 board members sit on those committees. The chairs would be Tanis Mindell, who is the person I was speaking of earlier, that was a previous board chair and oversaw the merger of liquor and lotteries. And the board chair is Tim Comack for the Strategic Planning and Governance Committee, who was appointed by the previous government. He's also the vice chair of the board and an independent businessman. And then the board chair for the Human Rights and Compensation Committee is Sarah Pinsent. And Sarah is somebody who specializes in mental health counseling and brings a strong focus on social responsibility to our board. And then the board members, the other board members are Doug Ramsey, who is a professor in the University of Brandon, Sarah Penner, who brings a very strong business presence. She's been a very good addition to the board. And who else am I forgetting here? Josiane Kroll, who has a strong IT designation, and I think she was the last one. We did have the second person who was appointed by the previous government was Christine Van Kouwenberg, but she did not seek reappointment, so there's a vacancy on the board in that position currently.
Mr. King.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for that answer. Just move into the cannabis here now. So cannabis revenues increased by 22.7 million to 153 million. Now, was the increase in private retailers to 205 responsible for this increase? And if so, will you be working to further increase private retail numbers? And if not, what specific factors contributed to this growth?
Honorable Minister.
Yeah, before passing on the response to the president, I will say that the cannabis retail environment is quite dynamic, I think, for lack of a better word. The addition and subtraction of that industry in terms of stores, I would say, came as a surprise to me. But at the same time, because it's a very young industry in Canada and in Manitoba, the MBLL has been able to act quickly and respond to those quickly changing needs. So I would just maybe preface the president's response with that information.
Mr. Sewell.
Yes. So I think, when you think of factors of growth, as it relates to, year-over growth in cannabis, stores, obviously have, played a factor in kind of creating convenience out there. But I think a larger factor would be the downward pressures on cannabis prices. So one of the challenges when that industry was established, cannabis was kind of built around a $10 a gram model. The average catalog price is about $3.60 now. So not good for suppliers, but at the same time, good for retailers to offer great prices, to consumers. So, that's kind of helped kind of attract, the consumers to have fair pricing out there. I think, introduction of, new lines of product, that being, the edibles, is obviously a contributor to it. I think to the question of, growth and is it sustainable? I think is kind of the question is that, again, when this was established by Premier Pallister, was it full intent was to a full open market in Manitoba. And so we're seeing the effect, we're seeing how an open market works. It's growing. You're seeing, losses, you're seeing gains, you're seeing amalgamations and mergers and acquisitions happening. I think ultimately the consumer will dictate when it stops growing as far as the number of retail locations in the province of Manitoba.
Mr. King.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering if they can explain what technology initiatives are planned for the upcoming fiscal year to enhance cannabis operations, what the cost to implement that will be, and how they are expected to improve MBLL's bottom line as well as increase retailer profitability.
Mr. Sewell.
So when we introduced the cannabis sector in Manitoba, actually it had very little impact from a technology perspective because, again, we were able to leverage our liquor systems that we had in place. So it's just another product, as it relates to our business system. So it had, little incremental cost as it relates to technology investment. The only investment that we've made recently, and really the investment is paid for by the retailer, is the ability to track. So this the seed to sale tracking mechanism for the integrity of, selling non-medical marijuana or cannabis. And so, we implemented a solution where we were able to kind of track seed and seed to the sale side of the process. So there's not a lot of investment planned for or required because, again, the existing business systems can support cannabis.
Mr. King.
So, Mr. Chair, I'm just wondering are there any plans being developed to allow cannabis sales and consumption at places like festivals and public events, like something like a beer gardens, and does other jurisdictions have regulations regarding this? Do we know?
Honorable Minister.
Currently, there are no plans in the immediate work. However, as jurisdictions have different rules and regulations that the MBLL is always keeping an eye on those things, but this isn't something that we are hearing is from the public. It is something that they want, but I'll allow.
Mr. Sewell.
So I think we are, we're aware, we consult, regularly with our cannabis retailers, and I know that, those are some of their interests or wants and needs to, hopefully either differentiate themselves or expand their business. At the same time, this would fall under the purview of the LGCA. Ultimately, to make some of those decisions or any other, some of the requirements that they have would, fall under Health Canada as to whether they would be permitted or permissible.
Mr. King.
So what impact, Mr. Chair, I'm wondering, will newly legalized homegrown cannabis have on retail cannabis sales? And what, if any, steps is MBLL taking to ensure the safety of home-based production?
Honorable Minister.
I think the easiest response to your question is it will have a fairly negligible effect on retail sales of cannabis. I would liken it to planting tomatoes in your garden, and what does that do to the amount of tomatoes available at your local grocery store? And it doesn't really drive the overall production and consumption of those tomatoes year over year. But I can.
Mr. Sewell.
Yeah, thanks. So again, if you look into the other jurisdictions where the sale of seed is permitted, again, it's so negligible. It's less than 1% as far as it relates to contribution to net income. So it's very minimal.
Mr. King.
Mr. Chair, just wondering also what plans are there to extend cannabis sales into mixed retail establishments like convenience or grocery stores?
Honorable Minister.
When we look at the current annual report for 23-24, that wasn't something that was, would be reflected in the figures there. Continuing to look at the cannabis sector's performance and dynamic growth and change and in some sense, instability. I think that having those considerations is not something that's reflected in this report.
Mr. King.
Okay, well, thanks for that. Just moving into the lotteries here a bit now. Mr. Chair, wondering what initiatives are being implemented to enhance the appeal of lottery products and attract a broader customer base?
Mr. Sewell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So again, there's recognition that, again, the appeal of lottery is continuing to decline, whether it's scratch tickets, whether it's the appeal of Lotto 649, Lotto Max. And so again, when you look at Lotto Max and Lotto 649, these are all developed in partnership with the other provincial jurisdictions, so through the Interprovincial Lotteries Corporation. Again, we're responsible, and we have a joint entity, that we oversee the development and promotion of draw-based games like Lotto Max. We are actively right now working on a refresh of Lotto Max. We recognize, again, when we're seeing people, even when we're hitting those jackpots, and even for sustained periods, we're seeing rollovers, we're not seeing the related incremental sales we would have. Because typically what we would see as it continues to roll and roll, you start to see the incremental sales just growing and growing and growing, and we're not seeing kind of that curve at the end of the sales projections. And so we need to enhance it. We need to refresh it. We need to make it relevant to the consumer, because again, I hate to say it, but $70 million is not doing it for people these days. It used to be.
The Honourable Minister. Mr. King.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And just how does MBLL plan to leverage technology to improve the lottery experience for consumers and increase sales?
Mr. Sewell.
Yes. So where we have direct influence, obviously, is through the Western Canada Lottery Corporation. So in 1974, Manitoba, at that time, Manitoba, British Columbia, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba kind of created a joint entity, to oversee lottery products. And so, we recognize that paper-based products, are starting to age, and we got to get with the times. So we are actively pursuing a digital iLottery solution through Western Canada Lotteries. So Western Canada Lotteries, is responsible, or we've given them conduct and managed to sell lottery products across the 3 provinces. And we are looking at a digital platform to sell iLottery. So, can we make it more exciting, as opposed to just scratching a ticket with a dime? Is there some, better experience, that we can provide the consumer that makes it more appealing to them and kind of increase sales?
Mr. King.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and thanks for that answer, Mr. President. For the online gaming, the revenue decreased by approximately $500,000. Shows there on page 19 of the report. So can you tell me what factors contributed to this decline, and what strategies are in place to boost online gaming revenues, and what steps will be taken to enhance the online experience and attract new users?
Mr. Sewell.
So I'll speak first to the decline. So again, I think I mentioned in my opening remarks, the first part of the decline obviously is related to incremental expenses due to partnerships. So we entered into exclusivity partnerships with some of our professional sports teams here in Manitoba, so as to avoid them being able to advertise in those venues. It's just playnow.com in there. So again, that was a significant investment. The second part of it, again, tied back to not seeing those lottery rolls. So there was about $1 million impact, that we had just from the fact that lotteries weren't performing, and of course, lotteries online, weren't performing themselves. As it relates to kind of, keeping it relevant, our current host provider is British Columbia Lottery. So BCLC actually hosts the platform that we play on. So they have an equivalent one in British Columbia, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba. They've just gone to tender for a new platform. So there's some recognition that if we're going to compete still, if we can't shut out the illegal market, that we have to have a platform that, would basically attract consumers to play there and make that their destination. So they are actively in market, looking at a new solution that would provide a new experience for the Manitoba consumer.
Absolutely. Mr. Gertson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Does the corporation have an estimate of how much money is laundered at casinos every year in Manitoba?
Mr. Sewell?
So as far as kind of, I think to estimate, that's the responsibility of FinTrack. So again, our obligation is to detect and report. We have an obligation as it relates to proceeds of crime, money laundering, terrorist financing act, to report to FinTrack various transactions as a casino entity. So we report casino disbursement reports. So a casino disbursement report would be $10,000 transaction over a period or a consecutive 24-hour period. We record large cash transactions, so that would be disbursements to a player of more than $10,000 over a 24-hour period. And of course, we're obliged to report what we call suspicious transactions, where we have some grounds to suspect or grounds to believe, that a suspicious transaction is being conducted. All that information basically is forwarded on to FinTrack for them to do the analysis. So, we're not the intelligence agency, we're the reporter at the end of the day, but, again, we do a great job and we're very diligent in reporting that. To FinTrack, we report about 4,000 to 5,000 transactions annually. About 400 to 500 of those would be, deemed to be what we call suspicious transactions. But again, it's not necessarily a suspicious transaction. It's just, it looks like one. But again, ultimately, it's up to FinTrack to do their analysis, because I think, as we understand, organized crime is complex, it's diverse, it's geographically, widespread, and so it's up to them to kind of piece it all together and kind of put the picture together. If is it legitimate transaction, or is it an illegal transaction, or somehow tied to terrorist financing or organized crime, that sort of thing. So, I can't put a number to say, well, how much money is laundered in the casinos, other than we are very diligent in reporting that to FinTrack and let them do their job.
Honorable Minister?
And I just think to reiterate the point, as being a public corporation that has the fiduciary responsibility to Manitobans, provides security in the fact that people can rely on their organization to protect them. And when you think about other gaming platforms that may be offshore, Gibraltar, or who knows where, that assurance doesn't exist. So I think given the types of programs and items that were shared by the President, on top of the fact that the public corporation piece of the MBLL is probably would say as being one of the most robust programs in the country.
Mr. Sewell?
I could just add, I just want to, add the comment. So, there has been a recent incident, that was publicized where there was a person involved in, trafficking of drugs, that was actually prosecuted, which, again, it's not often we get to know, if somebody actually was, convicted, of some sort of crime after the fact. But, that was one notable one that was publicized in the province of Manitoba, where, again, was a known, fentanyl trafficker that was laundering, money in the casinos itself.
Mr. Gertson?
So if you're reporting to FinTrack transactions of cash over $10,000, how many of those in particular have there been over the last 3 years, to try and get a comparative analysis if there's more people using cash transactions of over $10,000 at the casinos, and how many players have been suspended as a result of suspicion for money laundering?
Mr. Sewell?
Firstly, I guess speaking to kind of, if we think about kind of looking over trend, like from a trend perspective, we haven't seen any kind of notable increases or kind of decreases. The numbers are very consistent year over year, and kind of what we report back to FinTrack. And also remember, it's not just reporting on, Club Region Casino, McPhillips Casino. We report on the 3 First Nations casinos and any video lottery terminal site that has more than 50 machines. So we have an obligation to report on their behalf at the end of the day. So for us, kind of thing, when I think it was mentioned that it was cash. Like it could be any currency. So again, it could be check, chips, anything. Anything that's dispersed. It's not just cash transactions. So we're not seeing any incremental cash transactions happening in the casino.
Mr. Gertson?
Follow up on that last question. How many players have been suspended for suspicion of money laundering at the casinos?
Mr. Sewell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so again, unless we're made aware of, that an individual has been convicted, there has been no barring or involuntary exclusion of any particular players. Again, any exclusions that we would initiate through the casino, would be through direct actions against the casino. So vandalism, cheat at play, things like that, where we would actually take measures or actions to bar players. As it relates specifically to money laundering, we've never, been advised such that, okay, we're going to bar a player. So, ultimately, once somebody has been convicted, of course, that person would be on the involuntary exclusion list.
Mr. Gertson.
In Ontario and British Columbia, they've indicated that if there is a tariff implemented by the United States, that they're going to pull products that are produced in the United States. Has the Manitoba government or has the corporation put together a list of US-based alcohol products for consideration of pulling if in fact there are tariffs implemented?
Honorable Minister.
I think your question is speaks to kind of the overall over our whole of government approach to the response to what may or may not happen on February 1st. Of course, I think that it's important to note that the Premier has indicated publicly, very publicly, some of the measures that they are taking in terms of border security, in terms of diplomacy with fellow premiers across the province. As the MBLL goes, there is nothing to comment on here today, given that it's the annual report of the corporation.
Before we move on to any more questions or comment, I just want to remind everyone that we're here to deal with the annual report and that questions should relate to the annual report and what's within the report. Mr. Gertson?
How many products that MBL sells would find their origins in the United States?
Yes, Mr. Sewell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So about 6% of our products originate from the U.S., and I would make up about 7% of sales dollars. I have a breakdown for you. So there's 409 spirits, 341 wines, 21 ready-to-drink products, and 57 beers.
Mr. Gertson.
At one point, I think products made in Russia were pulled from the shelves of MBL. Is that still the case, or are those products still not available at MBL that are made in Russia?
Mr. Sewell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That would be correct.
Mr. Gertson.
So it's not a difficult process to pull products. We don't have any sort of agreements that would prevent MBLL from pulling American products if, for whatever reason, there was a desire to do so.
Mr. Sewell.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think other than obviously the logistics of, what do you do with the product, once you've kind of pulled it, because then it's not available for sale. So, we would have a, large inventory of that. I think one of the benefits to Manitobans is the fact that, we represent 70 different countries. We've got 13,000 products available. There's a lot to choose from. So if there was ever to be some decision that, saw the removal of US-based products, I believe Manitobans would still have lots of choice.
Mr. Gertson.
Not being a wine or other spirit connoisseur, maybe you can educate me on how many of the products that you sell are made in Canada.
Mr. Sewell.
Mr. Chair, I wouldn't have that number available.
Mr. Gertson.
Has there been any effort or consideration of sort of a buy Canadians effort by MBLL, either related to potential tariffs or otherwise? Honourable Minister.
I just referring back to the Premier's comments not that long ago about not only in terms of the choices citizens make for their vacation, for their summer plans. I think that the Canadian pride and the importance of supporting local industries, whether it's craft, local Manitoba industries, whether it's going and choosing Patent 5 product over a product that is maybe distilled in Quebec. So I think going back to the Premier's quotes about what it means to be Canadian, proud to be Canadian and buying Canadian, I think that's always, whether or not there's a specter of what may or may not happen after February 1st, it's always in the consumer's hand to make those choices, as well as entertaining themselves and any of our festivals that the MBL spends a lot of time promoting and supporting.
Mr. King.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So back to casinos here. The casino revenues increased by 16.7 million to 246 million on page 15, I read, but the operating income decreased. Can that be explained?
Mr. Sewell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, there's two primary factors. Obviously, it was the increased general wage increases that resulted post-collective agreements being settled is one factor. The second is kind of related to technology deficit. So again, there was a number of years where we had limited access to capital to maintain our related infrastructure and technology. And so we're playing catch up now to, enhance and improve and bring to the current versions levels that are required for the various softwares and technology that we utilize in the casinos. So it's increased technology spend.
Mr. King.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Wondering if they can explain how casinos such as South Beach Casino or the Shark Club impact casino revenue for MBL. It's operated at establishments, and what is MBLL's share of revenue from these type of establishments? Why does MBL cover the capital cost of gaming equipment for these establishments? And is there interest charged to a non-MBLL operated casino over the 5-year period that the capital expenditure for new gaming equipment is being recovered?
Honorable Minister.
Yeah, just in advance of the response from the President, I think going back to the point that he made earlier is the investment in the experience and the investment in the corporation to be able to draw players to the offerings that the MBLL owns. So that would be casino, the casinos that we have. And the more that we can be able to have access to capital, to be able to do that type of work, I think will enhance the experience for the players. So looking at the context of the player in Manitoba and what it is that they are seeking when they attend a casino, I think it's always important that the MBLL continues to make those investments in our operations to be able to be an attractive choice for the consumer. And as far as the relationship between the MBLL and the casinos you described, I'll allow that.
Mr. Sewell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So to answer the question, so again, they retain 100% of the earnings. So all three First Nations casinos, Seneskac, Sandhills, and South Beach retain 100% of their earnings. The thing to recognize is that, we have conduct and management responsibility over those three First Nation casinos. And the fact that the criminal code does not allow for the First Nations to purchase their own games. So it's necessary for Manitoba Liquor and Lottery to purchase on their behalf. So those gaming equipment or any gaming equipment or gaming supplies are purchased on their behalf. And again, we get back principal and interest through, when we amortize it over generally the useful life of a gaming machine, so typically 5 years. So again, all the money is fully recovered as well as any conduct and managed services that we offer to the three First Nation casinos in Manitoba.
Mr. King.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, what strategies are in place to sustain and further increase casino revenues in the future? Are there any stats indicating where the casino patrons are coming from? Are they Manitobans or from other provinces and countries? And what's being done to attract extra provincial tourism dollars to MBLL operated casinos?
Mr. Sewell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think it's important in the casinos, again, to make sure that your gaming offerings and entertainment, are relevant. And so it's always important to invest and reinvest in maintaining and refreshing your gaming equipment. So whether it's lease games, and changing the look and feel of them, or bringing in, new games, people grow tired. They're something called gaming fatigue. They get tired. That said, there are customers who love to play the same old, kind of over time. But we want to kind of keep the floor refreshed, along the way. And so we're always reinvesting in refreshing the gaming floor. So we replaced 238 slot machines in the 2023-24 fiscal year. And again, we see, what the house average is, our earnings per game, and we see that material increase as we roll in new gaming equipment. And it's not just it took from somewhere else and it brought it to this new game. We see net incremental revenue. So we want to make investments, and we can't get stagnant in kind of what we offer to the consumer.
Honourable Minister.
And just to add to that point, there's a lot of entertainment offerings that are happening in the Club Region, for example, that it's one of the busiest venues in the city, where you have a continual return of popular acts, comedians. I know that we have a very robust marketing campaign, but also workers who are going out there to be able to attract that talent, to have people come in within Manitoba to visit Winnipeg, to spend their entertainment dollars here. We know that we're in competition with all sorts of different venues and different organizations who are competing for that dollar, and really proud of the work that's been done to be able to attract that type of entertainment here, where sometimes that work has been done to attract artists who are just on the cusp of making it big. When you look at the host of the Golden Globes or Oscars or whatever it was, I guess the Golden Globes just recently coming to do multiple shows here in the city in the very near future. I think that just shows the type of work that goes into recruiting that talent, having sold out shows around the holidays, and to have repeat stays by not only by the artists. Like, the artists are coming back. They're making Club Regent and their stop on the way across Western Manitoba or Western Canada. And I think that goes into the investment and some of the capital within the entertainment center that allows it to change the size of the venue, to be able to host banquets, to be able to host award shows, to be able to host concerts, small and large. And the more that we can continue to do that, really, attracts people to the hotel, to the casino, to the restaurant, to the stores that are in Winnipeg. And the more that we can contribute to that, to a real positive experience for Manitobans, I think it goes a long way.
Mr. Sewell.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I guess to follow, finish up on kind of the question. So, again, we recognize there's competition out there. If you watch, TV or the media, you're seeing advertising from casinos, North Dakota, South Dakota, casinos of Regina, they're advertising in our domain or in our market space. And so, of course, advertising is an important element, and our marketing and communication team, does a great job in kind of promoting our casinos. So not only, advertising, outside the boundaries of Manitoba, and then, within Manitoba, to make people aware of, the offerings we have. We do a lot of work investing in, events that would drive traffic, into our specific casinos. So our investment in marketing and advertising for casinos was $2.7 million in that fiscal 23-24.
Mr. King.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So just to follow up to that question, part of that question was, and maybe I missed it in the answer, but is there any way of tracking or any stats of indicating where our patrons are coming from to our casinos from out of province, out of country? Do we have any way of analyzing that?
Mr. Sewell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we have something called that's like a loyalty card or a club card, that does allow us, if they do sign up, to be able to track, their origins, at the end of the day, and to kind of track those type of, where they're coming from, or, where they're traveling from. We are mostly a locals casino, though, I would tell you that. So, primarily people are from Manitoba, that are in our casinos, but at the same time, we could track those. I don't have those numbers readily available, but we have that ability to track if you sign up for a club card.
Mr. King.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in relation to McPhillip Street Station Casino and Club Regent Casino, what percentage of table game floor area is currently being utilized? For example, is there surplus square footage due to underperforming gaming options, or are there any table games that have seen a large drop in popularity?
Honourable Minister.
So what we're discovering with that the market has changed, where there's migration to different platforms, Play Now, online, but also to the offerings on the floor, not in terms of table games. So the responsiveness of the MBLL to the changing trends is actually it's very important in being able to manage what's happening and being able to, if there are games that are money losers or not only that present challenges for the casino, they are able to respond appropriately. They always keep an eye on the best utilization of the space and making sure that the consumer experience is very positive. So whether or not the space is there and the use that it is always paramount to what is the experience of the player going to be like. So.
Mr. Sewell.
Mr. Chair. So again, we're constantly, looking to kind of optimize the gaming floor. So when we came out of the pandemic, obviously for social distancing reasons, we reduced the number of gaming equipment on the floor. So we were very responsible when we reopened the casinos to be mindful of, okay, do we really need that many more games? So we were incrementally adding on while kind of keeping that kind of look and feel of kind of, having a lot of, I'll say arm room around or elbow room, around the games kind of thing. And we got to a point where, we'd gotten it down to, we were less than 2,000 machines. We're at 2,200 machines across the two casinos. Similarly, we watched, the behaviors on the table games itself. So we have 13 tables at McPhillips, 13 tables at Club Regent, and 3 of them over at the Shark Club Gaming Center. We've recently done a review of it, and we believe that there's no reason or rationale to, expand upon that. Again, but there are times where we see, hey, there's an over demand on the baccarat tables or things like that, where, hey, is it feasible or will it improve net income to add yet another table game? So we're constantly monitoring and kind of managing that. And again, when we see games or table games not performing, we'll look to either swap them out or outright remove them. And a good example would be post-pandemic when we got rid of the poker room. The poker room wasn't feasible and it wasn't responsible for us as an organization to continue on with poker because, again, not responsible to run a loss leader.
Mr. King.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Mr. President, for that answer, which leads me to the next one. Can you explain the options available to private establishments, such as a Legion or Lounge, in offering table games like poker? Can a private establishment be licensed for permanent gaming, or is it only one-off events? So you walk by an establishment, you see a poker game going on, is that considered illegal, or do they have a permit, or?
Mr. Sewell.
Jerry, it should have a LGCA permit with that. So charitable gaming is permitted, outside of the casinos of Winnipeg. Again, the only real option available to private owners or commercial establishments, would be the introduction of VLT games out there.
Mr. King.
So, just so I'm clear, a private establishment, it has to have a permit for a one-off event. It can't be licensed.
Mr. Sewell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, no, so again, it would be a permitted event and it would be a charitable event allowed by the LGCA.
Mr. King.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In your report there that there was 6,715 VLTs in the province. How does that compare to last year, and was there any plans to increase that number?
Mr. Sewell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the 6,715 machines is a fixed number. So it was established by policy that there would be no more than 5,122 commercial VLTs in the province of Manitoba. So we've never exceeded that number for as long as I've been employed here. That's been a fixed number. And then the other amount comes from the 1,593 First Nation VLTs that are out there. That's a number that actually could fluctuate. So if a First Nation were to request additional VLTs, that you would see that 6,715 number actually grow over time. But of course, due to the gaming pause, that number hasn't fluctuated in a number of years, or at least hasn't since 2018.
So far, so good. I'm just going to remind everyone to address your questions through the chair. Mr. King.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So that fluctuating, what would just cause be for adding more machines, or what would be the request? Popularity, or not enough machines in the venue? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Sewell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So you know, we're constantly fielding requests for new VLTs. Because, you know, we always see closures, you know, of establishments through the province of Manitoba. We would look to recycle the existing machines that we have. So if you see a hotel closure, we've seen a number of hotel closures in Manitoba over the last year. We would basically take that inventory and basically offer those to, you know, people waiting in the queue, again, not to exceed that 5,122.
Honourable Minister.
And just to add, there are no plans to exceed that amount of VLTs at the moment.
Mr. King.
Just another question here on the VLTs. So what is the commission paid to the partners, Mr. Chair, to the board here? What's the commission paid to the partners hosting the VLTs, and are there any plans to change the commission structure on those VLTs?
Honourable Minister.
You know, referring back to the annual report, what you see in front of you represents a commercial split of 20/80 and then 90/10 for VLTs on First Nations. So in the current context that we have, those are the splits.
Mr. Sewell.
No.
Mr. King.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to cede the floor to Mr. North for some questions.
Mr. North.
Okay, thank you, Honorable Chair. First question that I'll start off with follows up on casino and lotteries, since we're on a roll there, and then I'll focus some questions on liquor operations. So the first question would be to Mr. Sewell. In your mandate letter from the minister, it was clearly outlined, and we touched base on it a couple times throughout today's committee, was to work collaboratively with stakeholders to lift the pause on gaming expansion in a targeted fashion to include supporting economic reconciliation and local economic development while maintaining MBLL's commitment to supporting the communities they serve. You had also mentioned, Mr. Sewell had also mentioned, Honourable Chair, that that this was in fact limiting the pause was limiting the future sustainability of that area of the corporation. Has there been any expansion since the mandate letter? And is there any proposed expansion that Manitobans can expect?
Honourable Minister.
Initial response here is that when you look at the context of Manitoba was consistently growing from 2017 on, right? So when you put a pause on there, in 2017, what it created was basically a situation where you have a balloon. And your balloon of requests and the balloon of changes, and you're just consistently adding air to the balloon and getting outreach, say, hey, we would like this, we would like that. So in lifting the gaming pause, I would like you to use that image of that balloon and see what would it be a responsible way to let the air out. Because over the course of 7 years, the pressure on the system and the pressure of the requests that were basically not even entertained because of the pause meant that there was higher pressures on letting them all out at once. So taking the time to be able to meet with whichever stakeholders had made requests in the past and were denied any access or audience because of the pause is important to be able to re-engage those conversations. So in time, as we engage with public who are wanting to advance some of their interests or have opportunities. I think if you use the balloon aspect, if you let it go really quickly, it could create a chaotic situation. That balloon will be flying all over the room, probably hitting people in the face, where we have the opportunity as a government to basically let the air out slowly, where we listen and meet with stakeholders in a controlled fashion to be able to, after the air is out, make decisions. And
Mr. Sewell?
I'd just like to add, as it relates to kind of, the profitability of the VLT, line of business, I think, what impacted us the greatest was the gaming pause. So if you think back to 2018, we weren't allowed to refresh our gaming environment. We had actually gotten to 93% of our VLTs in the province of Manitoba were obsolete. You can't add new game content. You can't find new parts for these games. And so we saw, again, our revenues erode, over that time because we're not offering, something fresh to the consumers. And whether you're in rural Manitoba or in the city of Winnipeg, we got to a point of, like I say, 93% of our machines are not supported by the vendor. We have machines in our inventory that are greater than 13 years old, that are out there. And of course, much like equal to the lottery situation, again, it's grown tired, and you're starting to see that, start to drift off as far as kind of our, contribution to the bottom line. It's essential that we refresh those VLTs and keep them fresh, for the consumer and for the health of our net income to the province.
Mr. North?
You Honourable Chair, just to follow up to the minister on that. So essentially what you're saying is that that you've upheld the pause for the last year, outside of possibly refreshing some of the technology around the digital games. Other than that, though, there hasn't. You made reference to a balloon, and letting the air out quickly is dangerous. So your approach has been to tie the knot, essentially.
absolutely.
Honourable Minister?
Absolutely not. I think that when you look at the gaming pause and what that means, I think your definition is a proliferation of the gaming industry. What the lifting the gaming pause effectively is a conversation with the stakeholders and environment, where it takes time to be able to develop whatever strategy may come out of those discussions. So rather, the important part here is that when you're not talking to your Manitobans, and you're essentially putting your head in the sand and not really listening to what other people are saying, how can you make any progress forward? So you have this built-up angst, you have this built-up demand that the MBLL has absolutely no mechanism throughout those 7 years to be able to make any decisions or any planning to some eventual removal of the pause. So when you do remove the pause, then those conversations can start. And that's an important distinction between what your definition of the pause is, whether it's the MBLL could have a stockpile ready to go, a stockpile of consultation, a stockpile of meetings, a stockpile of supplies, a stockpile of strategy. The gaming pause limited and handcuffed the MBLL where they couldn't do any of those things. So the reference of putting the pause, as you take it, is a complete, wild, wild west here of expansion of gaming. And the most important thing is engagement with our stakeholders, engagement with Manitobans to see what is the most responsible course forward. Because, you want to make sure that whatever expansion of gaming or lifting of the pause, it translates into a responsible rollout of future businesses.
Before we continue, I just want to remind everyone that questions and comments must be put through the chair using third person as opposed to directly to members and representatives. Mr. King? Or Mr. North, sorry.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. My next question I'd like to be directed at the CEO through you, Honourable Chair. Touching base on liquor operations through MBLL, Mr. Sewell had made mention that we're proudly celebrating 100 years of publicly managed liquor sales in Manitoba. And as we know, a lot changes in business environment and in operations over 100 years. And I know that MBLL and the structure, organization, and efforts of operation are not unique to that. So for the committee today and Manitobans, Honorable Chair, would the CEO be able to tell Manitobans how we use the blended model of private public liquor retailing, what that looks like, and would he be able to share with the committee what the structure is and how is liquor purchased from suppliers, how it's warehoused, distributed, and retailed throughout the province. So paint us a picture on how that blended public-private model looks from the purchase to the retail.
Mr. Sewell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess first I would start, again, when you think about, you mentioned, it's mentioned 100 years. Again, things have evolved, and I think, what's really evolved is how complementary it's been, to have this private-public model that we have in Manitoba. Again, there's places where it's not feasible, for us to stand up, a full-scale, liquor mart store, and it provides opportunities, for private entrepreneurs, in various communities, throughout Manitoba, not only to benefit them, as an entrepreneur, but it benefits, the people that they serve, in their respective communities. So, I think, as kind of we look at, what the network looks like in the province of Manitoba, it's always important that we're looking at it that it's complementary and it's not competitive. At the end of the day, that's important because, again, it's about serving Manitobans, with the best price and selection and convenience that we can offer to the provinces of Manitoba. And so, I see that kind of evolving. Over years, we've seen, liquor vendors, converted to liquor mart stores. We've seen it go the other way. We've seen liquor mart stores, turn over to liquor vendors. I think we always have to look at it from a profitability perspective. Again, what's best for the net income to the province and what is best, for the consumer, to provide them, access to, beverage alcohol in a responsible way out there. I think, when you look at I think it's asked, well, how does the model work or how does the process work? Again, we're a single buyer. We're one of the largest single buyers in the world. And so that gives us access to products that many jurisdictions don't have access to. Provinces like Ontario, British Columbia, again, we're able to kind of leverage our being one of the largest single buyers of beverage alcohol. And it gives us access to products, doesn't matter what category you're playing in, it provides selection to Manitoba. So Manitobans benefit from having a single buyer in the province of Manitoba. It provides us buying power and access to product. At the same time, again, we leverage the ability of having a single warehouse and single group of staff. So when it comes, when we bring it into the province and we bring it through our distribution center, all those channels benefit from the cost efficiencies or economies of scale that are built through using a single source to basically procure, to manage the customs excise, the clearing process, the distribution process. Everybody in the channels benefit from that. So, when the product comes in, we distribute it out, to the various partners. How the partners benefit, obviously there's discounts, that are offered to the various retailers depending on who you are. So if you're a liquor vendor in the province of Manitoba, you get a 11.75% discount on purchased product, with the exception of beer, which is 14.5%. If you're a licensee, again, you're getting 14.5%, on the beer. If you're a hotel beer vendor, you're getting 11.75% on coolers and ciders and 14.5% on beer. So again, as you kind of go downstream, again, those benefits start to push back into the hands of the private entrepreneurs that are out there that are running liquor retail businesses in the province of Manitoba. And again, it's a very simplified or oversimplified. I don't know how much detail we wanted to get into of kind of the process, but again, it all flows through Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries. And at the same time, again, the beneficiaries are much broader than Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries, and the province itself as a whole.
Mr. North?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Just to touch on that before we move on, That agreement between the MBLL and the private liquor establishments, whether that be the licensees that are selling it in an establishment or the private liquor stores or the beer vendors, when was the last time that that agreement, the agreement between the private entrepreneurs and MBLL was revisited, as far as the model, but also the profit share?
The Honorable President.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So you know, as I mentioned earlier, we just struck a new agreement with the Manitoba Private Wine Store Association. So that was fresh in July of 2023. We haven't revisited the Manitoba Hotel Association or liquor vendor agreements in a number of years. I think, you know, the reference being, you know, and as it relates to the profit sharing or the discount amounts hasn't been revisited in many years in my time with the corporation. That hasn't happened.
Mr. North.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Because we're leading it now is, as we've seen labor agreements change as of recently through the labor disputes and recent strike in this fiscal year that we're discussing in the report. And you had mentioned last year the private wine stores. Their agreement has been revisited. Is there plans to also revisit the other agreements, as we've seen that it's important to provide a fair workforce, as you've stated, to focus on stability of the workforce, knowing that there is hope in being employed with good pay in the public sector? Is that something that you plan to revisit in your private partnership?
Mr. Sewell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, I think it's important to regularly have consultations, you know, with the various business partners that we have out there, and you know, to be on top of kind of, you know, what the demands or needs are out there, and to, you know, discuss those through. But, you know, again, you know, I would kind of encourage, you know, those organizations to come forward and, you know, if they want to entertain discussions, you know, so we can understand some of the headwinds or challenges that are being faced by the industry partners that are out there. But again, we're always willing to work with our industry partners. Again, when our industry partners are successful, we are successful too.
Mr. North.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. A key message in the minister's mandate letter to the Crown Corporation was to, and I quote, responsibly expand public liquor retail stores, including Liquor Mart Express outlets, to give Manitobans more options while maintaining support for the small businesses in rural and northern Manitoba to sell liquor, end quote. That was from the mandate letter. Honorable Chair, what has been done in the last year to expand liquor retailing throughout the province? And I guess we direct that at the CEO.
Mr. Sewell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so we've always had a robust Liquor Mart store development program. We're always constantly evaluating the performance of our stores. And again, that information is utilized to, you know, do we expand our stores? Do we contract our stores? Do we close stores? And as well as, you know, having an ear to the track as to, you know, what kind of residential and commercial developments happening throughout the provinces. Unfortunately, for about 7 years, we weren't able to pursue new opportunities. You know, so we've, you know, it wasn't until the new mandate letter that we were basically given, you know, the green light to kind of potentially go look for new opportunities to strengthen the net income, you know, back to the province. So we are just in the process of, you know, dusting off our store development program and, you know, looking at what those opportunities that were missed over the last number of years. And there are opportunities that, you know, out, because again, the landscape's always changing in our province, whether it's in the city or in rural Manitoba. You know, we need to be mindful of how do we best serve customers here.
Mr. North.
Okay, thank you, Honorable Chair. Thank you for that response. I'm going to, you know, focus my questions around the mandate letter, since that's what the minister had given direction to the corporation. And again, out of that quote, it was said that the goal of this was to give Manitobans more options. So my question, Honorable Chair, would be to the minister. In the spring session of 2024, a bill was brought forward, Bill 201, and the purpose of this bill was to expand liquor selection to Manitobans through expanding product offerings in the existing licensed retailers. So not to expand public or private licensees. This was just to expand the product offering within the current licensees. This bill did not pass, but is a way that your government could see expanding liquor product availability to Manitobans. Is this something that the government would support in the future?
The Honourable Minister.
So the bill did not pass. You're correct in that. I think going back to the response that was given by the president in terms of dusting off a retail expansion strategy and plan and being unbound to be able to do that work, I think that it's a responsible course of action, first of all, to be able to respond to that piece of the mandate. Also, looking at the robust number of retailers that we do have in Manitoba to be able to make those offerings. I think in the opening comments of the president, they referred to a large number of selections that we do have. Also having the type of buying power that MBLL has to be able to bring new products to Manitobans really demonstrates our commitment to be able to continue to do that. But also at the same time protecting the Manitoba market and ensuring that products that are brewed here and created here have prominent shelf space and cooler space in our store, and overrepresent in many ways the prominence of those in the stores. So I would suggest that the work is ongoing, that the expansion of the retail stores in Manitoba, that work is ongoing, that the examination of new opportunities in Manitoba, but also honoring existing agreements that we do have with our partners to be able to make sure that they also succeed, where there's not a proliferation of liquor sales in a way that is not within the responsible growth of the corporation. And the more that we can do those kinds of things, the more that we can boost our performance. And if you wanted to comment further, okay.
Mr. Narth.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. So I'll probably loop back at that shortly, but speaking to expansion of liquor retailing and the mandate letter from the minister, it also makes mention to expanding Liquor Mart Express outlets, and some Manitobans may be very familiar with what a Liquor Mart Express is, but I've learned a lot about liquor retailing in the last year through my role as the official opposition critic, and just how different liquor retailing is for rural Manitobans to City of Winnipeg Manitobans. So I represent the La Vérendrye constituency, which has a number of private beer vendors as well as private liquor stores, but doesn't have a single Manitoba liquor mart. So people in my region, the southeast region of Manitoba, and there are other regions of our province that are completely unfamiliar with a provincial public liquor mart and also Liquor Mart Express outlets. So my first question would be, how do these stores differ, the Liquor Mart Express, from regular liquor marts, and how many currently exist, and how many have been added since the fall of 2023?
Mr. Sewell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess for a distinction, so an express store typically, you would find it within a store or a major grocery store. Typically, they would be a footprint of 1,000 square feet or less. It's kind of the intention. Of course, the other part is, managing that limited space is kind of, we'd have just our top products or top SKUs on the shelf. So again, it's a very limited selection. Again, it's kind of aimed at, convenience or impulse type buying. So somebody's shopping, it's an opportunity, as they're leaving the grocery store, I'm going to pick up a bottle of wine or something to complement, what groceries they might have bought. So that's kind of the express model. We have 6 of them in the province of Manitoba currently. 5 of them are in the city of Winnipeg. 1 of them is in Brandon, Manitoba. Again, it was a pilot established more than 10 years ago. It basically stopped. We'd stopped at 6 and we hadn't kind of increased that number. Again, we are exploring. It's been a long time since we established the Express store. We've learned a lot about, maybe how we might do it better. We are, looking at, what would an Express 2.0 kind of look like for Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries and for the customers to provide a better experience. So that's kind of where we're at with the Liquor Mart Express side. But again, still in that exploration. So some might be familiar. We were out there testing we were looking at a concept, but we have not added any and made no commitments to anybody to add Express stores.
Mr. North?
Thank you, Honorable Chair, and thank you, Mr. Sewell, for clarifying that. It was a question that I had because it was highly outlined in the mandate letter. No new Liquor Mart Express have been added since the fall, but it's obviously something you're entertaining. And to my understanding, some have been added in recent years, though. Honorable Chair, my question is, what is the cost to set up a new Liquor Mart Express store within the Manitoba environment?
Honorable Minister?
So looking at the annual report, I don't think you would see any of those costs reflected in there. So that's what I would suggest. And as you correctly identified, it's been a while since that's happened. So to have share those costs here would be highly speculative.
Mr. Sewell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think if you want to reflect on cost in the day, when we were standing up Express stores in Manitoba, they were running in that $250,000 to $300,000 range as far as to stand up an Express store. Again, we haven't, because we're not pursuing any net new ones, we haven't got a new cost estimate as to what that might entail as far as capital cost or investment.
Mr. North?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Yeah, I appreciate that. I just thought since it's in the mandate letter, it's outlined of a feasible option for MBLL to expand liquor availability to give Manitobans more options is what the minister's mandate letter clearly outlines, that potentially the corporation would be looking at the costs associated with that. But I appreciate Mr. Sewell giving us some high-level potential costs of what that would be at $250,000 to $300,000. Moving on then, Honorable Chair, in the annual report we saw an $864 million in total sales through liquor operations, $413 million in cost of sales. It's outlined in the income statement, or what's presented as an income statement, and $451 million in gross profit. It's then stated in the written report that the comprehensive income was $313 million. So my question is, what is included in the cost of sales to establish the gross profit, and what expenses are included in the calculations to achieve the comprehensive profit from the gross profit?
Mr. Sewell?
So I guess first, so we're looking for a breakdown of cost of sales.
Mr. North?
Yes, Honorable Chair. That's just to showcase to the committee today and Manitobans, you know, this is a Crown Corporation, and I think they'd appreciate transparency in the report. We see, you know, what seems to be the cost of goods sold, right, as the cost of sales. I think everyone can interpret that, and the total sales. But how does the corporation derive the gross profit and then the comprehensive income? So what makes up the difference between your cost of sales, your gross profit, and your comprehensive income?
Mr. Sewell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the component you're looking for is the duty paid landed costs. So again, duty, clearance, custom clearing, freight are all included, obviously, when we establish duty paid landed costs. And of course, you know, when we look at the cost to retail or the price at retail, of course, it's incremented by surcharges as well as the ad valorem markup, you know, that we have in the province of Manitoba for the various categories of product itself.
Mr. North?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. So that would get us the 451 million 755,000, correct? And then the $313 million. What would that include? Is that labor costs, rent, infrastructure costs? What's the difference between those two profits?
Mr. Sewell?
Mr. Chair, just for clarity, are we referring to page 11 or are we referring to page 17?
Mr. North?
Chair, page 17, and then in the written description of the report on page 16, which outlines the 313 million comprehensive income.
Mr. Sewell?
So the component you're missing is other products as well. So like, if we were looking at, you know, the four categories, beer, ready to drink, spirits and wine, then there are other products as well sold. So there's a component that you're not necessarily seeing in the breakdown on page 17 versus what you're seeing from page 11. I'm looking for more clarity.
Mr. North, if you could give us a little bit more clarity in
Sure.
your question in regards to exactly what you're looking for.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Thank you, Honorable Chair. For clarification, comprehensive income is another terminology for Manitobans that may not be familiar with accounting terminology. Comprehensive income would be another term for net income, correct? And the difference between what you have listed as your gross profit, which you know, it has that term profit, so that raises everyone's attention right away that that's the money that's made. But the difference between your gross profit on page 17 and what is reported as comprehensive income as a result of liquor operations, that difference between 313 million and the 451 million would not be the cost of goods sold, what would be all of your carrying costs. So your labor costs, your costs of the infrastructure, distribution, warehousing, that's what I'm trying to get. So what's included in the gross profit between the total sales, and then from the gross profit to the net income? You know, we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars here, so I think Manitobans would like to know how those numbers are established.
Mr. Sewell?
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and thanks for the clarification. So you know, again, you know, looking at the other operating costs, you know, that need to be kind of considered in this, you know, is the contribution to Manitoba Multi-Material Manitoba Stewardship, Manitoba. We have things like the corporate costs that basically get distributed. So there's human resources, marketing, information technology. Those costs are as well distributed back. They're allocated by our line of business. So whether it's liquor, lotteries, online gaming, we do a kind of a breakdown of those individual costs or corporate costs that are broken down to them. So staffing, outbound freight, Financial bank transaction costs, executive management costs are distributed across that. Social responsibility costs are distributed across that as well equally. So there are a number of factors, that basically, get allocated across the organization, given, again, we're one corporation, but there are various functions that need to be distributed across the various lines of business to reflect on the net income statement.
Mr. North?
Honorable Chair, and thank you for that clarification. I noticed, Honorable Chair, in the annual report that there was a significant decrease in the comprehensive income, which we're establishing as the net income, due to the 2023 labor dispute and new contracts that were negotiated following the recent labor dispute. And at the time last year when we had this committee and I was to ask questions, we knew about these things, but we didn't see them in the report at that time because of the overlap in years. So, Honorable Chair, could the CEO tell us how much this labor dispute costs the corporation in sales?
Mr. Sewell?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So I have that information. So when we look at the revenue, it was estimated, because again, we needed to do it on a comparative year over year. We estimated $22 million was the impact to revenue. And then after cost of sales, that would be a negative impact of $11.7 million or the gross profit. There's a positive impact to salaries and benefits as a result of using replacement workers, but not having to pay our unionized staff that worked in those Liquor Mart stores. That was $2.7 million. And again, other operating expenses added up to $1.2 million. The net income impact was estimated to be $10.174 million.
Mr. North?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Could you then tell us how much the renegotiation of labor costs equaled for MBLL in additional costs of operation this past fiscal year and moving forward? We had seen in the report 2.4 million, and it says 2.4 million including technology and regulatory costs. But for Manitobans in this committee today, would you be able to break out what that additional cost is attributed by the renegotiation of labor costs?
Mr. Sewell?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I wouldn't have the breakdown, but what I would indicate is that there was a 6% increase as far as salaries year over year.
Mr. North? Mr. Sewell?
And just for further clarity, again, those agreements were in arrears, so we were obviously having to retroactively play catch up as well.
Mr. North?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Just for clarification, and I didn't have that until you just mentioned it, but so is that 6% would be the increase in labor costs for the year and moving forward, or is that all the retroactive pay was 6%?
Mr. Sewell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So again, there's that included the retroactive costs, but moving forward, the general wage increases, obviously, there was a pattern, to that. So it's, we're in the years of 3% now as far as GWI now. So it's 2.5, 2.75, 3.3. And so, we're in the final years of, with some of the bargaining units of the 3%. So that's what you would see going forward.
Mr. North?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. So just to highlight then maybe that we see it's not a 6%, so it's not that big of a jump that we have to see in 1 year. It's 3% though moving forward. And just to be clear, that was renegotiation for labor in the public employees negotiations. And as we've clarified before, other than a renegotiation on the terms for for specialty wine stores, all other private distribution of liquor, retailing of liquor, which nearly makes up half of the total revenue of MBLL, or of liquor operations, was not renegotiated. So the 11 3/4 and 14 1/2 that's been in place for a number of years, that didn't see any increase along with the public employees renegotiation and increase, correct?
Mr. Sewell.
Yeah, that would be correct.
Honorable Chair.
Mr. Narth.
Thank you. Is there a bonus structure for the upper management and executives of the organization?
Mr. Sewell.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Yeah, there is no bonus structure in place at Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries.
Mr. Narth.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. In the last couple of years, Honorable Chair, we've been hearing a lot of liquor store theft. It's something that in the report was mentioned that there's been control that has been gained through the changes in operation. How much has been spent on retail security in the past fiscal year?
Mr. Sewell.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. We're currently, all 36 Liquor Mart stores in Winnipeg have controlled access or controlled entrances. We had added 10 more in rural Manitoba, where we thought the threat was kind of warranting the additional measures. In the last year, we have not added any net new ones.
Mr. Narth.
Honorable Chair, and thank you, Mr. Sewell, for that. As I had asked, is there a dollar amount? Is there a figure of what that additional security that was clearly needed in the Winnipeg stores, and like you had stated in 10 more of the rural Manitoba Liquor Marts? Is there a cost associated with that?
Mr. Sewell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So again, using historic numbers, we were averaging at the time, we were budgeting $60,000 per controlled entrance was the budget, and then there's an ongoing cost for the scanning equipment that we have in place.
Mr. Narth.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, and thank you for that. 60,000 per store. Just to clarify for the committee today and Manitobans, is there any financial support for security that was provided to the private partner stores or beer vendors through the struggle with security?
Mr. Sewell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, no supports were provided, other than, we offer ourselves to provide security advice, based on our experience, both in the casinos and our experience with the controlled accesses. We always make ourselves readily available to provide guidance and advice. So, some operators have taken us up on that opportunity.
Mr. Narth.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, how much was spent last year on advertising, and how has that changed from pre-pandemic 2019 to 2022 and now currently? What is the budget for advertising? Specific to, well, you can, if you have all of it available, but I was more so looking specific to liquor operations, but if you have a budget for lotteries and cannabis as well.
Mr. Sewell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I guess first and foremost, to kind of, point out, again, our requirement, to advertise and market, is important. We're in competition for disposable income. We're in competition, as we mentioned earlier, about casinos, as far as attracting people to our venues and casinos. And of course, we do spend, money on marketing and advertising to, create awareness, as well as to, the great products that we have in our stores. And of course, the same great products that are made available, to our various liquor vendors in the province of Manitoba. Our expenditures was $4.5 million in fiscal 23-24 for advertising. obviously a significant increase over the previous year, if you had those numbers at your avail, is that, again, a big part of that related to our investment in combating online gaming competition. So that's where the, a material change, I would say, across the other lines of business, there hasn't been any material year-over-year change as it relates to that particular investment. Again, the largest contribution to advertising and promotions is online gaming, and it exceeds $8.7 million. The rest of those numbers are much smaller. So when we look at lottery, it's $210,000. Casinos are $2.7 million. Hospitality and entertainment was almost $500,000. Liquor was $830,000. What you have to remember is that a lot of the merchandising or marketing at retail is paid for by the supplier. So again, it's not MBLL paying for that. So whether it's the Air Miles program or the limited time offers that we do have available in our Liquor Mart stores, the suppliers are the ones who actually pay for those programs. So because you might be surprised, why is that number so low for liquor at the end of the day? Our corporate was $323,000. Community relations was $445,000.
Mr. North?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I guess just to draw attention to how it all functions together with sort of central direction in a public-private model. The advertising budget for MBLL in general, and we could lump lotteries into that because VLTs are in private establishments. And liquor is sold, like we were saying, half of it through a private model, half of it through a public model. That advertising in general, is it made available to the private partners as well as advertising in general for Manitoba liquor marts? I guess we all see the TV commercials of advertising for Manitoba liquor marts, casinos of Winnipeg. Is there advertising support made available to your private partners that make up half of the sales?
Mr. Sewell?
Chair, no, there would be no offerings, currently, to have our marketing dollars to be, put towards the private operators. And that would, be true for, cannabis, liquor, and gaming.
Mr. North?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. So just to make it very clear to committee today then, that we've stated on liquor operations, 11.75% allowance in profitability through liquor and spirits, and 14.5 for beer vendors. That, like we've stated, is going to make up half of the general revenue for Manitoba liquor operations, and out of their allotted and only allowed profit margin, they're fully responsible for their own advertisement and promotion.
Mr. Sewell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think, the other thing to remember, again, a lot of our liquor vendors, liquor is not their primary line of business, and it can't be their primary line of business, when we establish liquor vendor agreements with parties. So again, this is a subsidiary or a smaller part of their business. Nonetheless, I know it's important to, again, draw customers, to your operations at the end of the day.
Mr. North?
Okay, thank you, Honorable Chair. Can the CEO give us a breakdown of the cost to run loyalty programs like Air Miles for MBLL? And with these programs, including Liquor Mart gift certificates, and not including, and is that not including partnered liquor vendors? And how is MBLL dealing with the advantage that they are creating for public stores in the marketplace?
Mr. Sewell?
For managing time, I think, maybe best served, provide an explanation kind of how it works or how the program works. So first and foremost, when it relates to, the advertising you see in store, that's paid for, by the suppliers. Again, we call it our merchandising at retail program. We have a large catalog offering, for suppliers to come in and, basically represent themselves in, a variety of ways, whether it's on end caps, whether it's, in-store displays or fixturing, that we have in our store. We have an opportunity to offer that to them. We've earned more than $2 million, through that program. Basically, it's actually earned revenue, through those programs. And again, it's paid for. The Air Miles program side of it, again, it's, the traditional is, what happens in a lot of organizations is, again, you have an established rate with the Air Miles company, now owned by Bank of Montreal, where we basically secure a certain amount of miles at a certain point value. And then similarly, we offer this to our suppliers to basically purchase marketing programs that are related to, giveaway of a specific kind of air miles. Again, the intention is to be net neutral or cost neutral, so that, again, there's no negative exposure to have to pay for air miles. So again, we're trying to be self-sufficient. So again, what you see out there, again, is paid for by suppliers. At the end of the day, it's the suppliers that are choosing to be in those markets to basically put their advertising and marketing dollars to, garner consumer sales at the end of the day. So it's not to say that, again, if they had a desire to have similar programs that made available to them through our various private channels like liquor vendors or hotel beer vendors, that, the same wouldn't happen. And it does happen in our hotel beer vendor channels, where some of the large beer companies, provide dollars, and, to be able to market in those type of spaces.
Before we continue, the committee agreed to rise at 3:31. Please be aware that the committee will need a minute at the end of the meeting to pass the report. Mr. North?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Yeah, that question had basically come out of discussions with the Manitoba Liquor Vendors Association, and concern that has been expressed for a number of years that the loyalty programs like Air Miles, which aren't made available to the Manitoba Liquor Association members, it creates an unfair advantage, basically, MBLL competing with themselves. So drawing attraction to the public stores instead of the private stores in some of those communities that aren't serviced by a public liquor mart. That being said, is there anything being done to draw consideration to expanding those programs to be on more of a level partnership playing field with the private liquor vendors?
The Honourable Minister.
I guess I would preface my answer by saying that MBLL serves those private vendors with a number of different services that those vendors don't have to pay for on their own. That the earlier response with respect to the net neutral type exposure also provides insight into the current environment. The important thing here to remember is that there is significant net revenues that are dispersed to private vendors across the province through the agreements that we currently have. And when we continue to look at increasing or the footprint of Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries across the province, there's always a consideration with existing liquor vendor agreements that have been signed. So the proliferation of stores in communities, that's always a consideration to make sure that the current owners are protected so that their trade area is not infringed upon. And I think that just really demonstrates the commitment that the MBLL has to being a strong partner with private retailers, where if to use a food store or a fast food store, there's no Wendy's beside a McDonald's, and that trade area is protected through our agreements with private retailers, and allowing the consumer to have that type of, or having that community have that type of reliability, that you won't have a proliferation of stores in a true capitalist market, I think demonstrates the MBLL's commitment to be able to be a good partner with private retailers.
Mr. North?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. So I guess just to touch on then again, so that committee and Manitobans know exactly how liquor pricing and retailing works in the province, and this came out of last year's committee process. We remember that comment was made that all liquor is retailed at the same price across the entire province. And that means that your bottle of wine costs the same at the Alice Liquor Mart as it would at, let's say, small town liquor store. Is that still correct? And is that the approach to liquor retailing that is being used in this current fiscal year and moving forward?
Mr. Sewell?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so uniform pricing is in legislation. So again, there are no options right now. So, and that's been in place for, as many years I've worked with the organization, that there's been uniform pricing in place. And again, it creates fairness across the geographies of Manitoba.
Mr. North?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. So then highlighting the financial report that we have in front of us on page 17, if we'd be able to draw out some of the revenue generated by Manitoba liquor vendors, beer vendors, and Manitoba liquor marts. So it's outlined in the report, but would you be able to clarify that today for committee?
Mr. Sewell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Sewell?
So I think, just kind of some observations, when we compare, year over year, one of the positive signs for our private retailers, actually, you can see that there's been growth, where we've seen declines in our liquor marts as far as a year over year total revenues. We're starting to see growth, in our liquor vendors and our licensee channels, as well as the specialty wine store channels. You'll see that in all three of them. So last year, if you would have looked at it, we were responsible for 53% of the sales back to the province of Manitoba. And again, that's dropped down to 51%. And again, it's, been distributed over to the, the rural private vendors that are out there, or private retailers.
Mr. North?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Then looking at the specific liquors which are broken out here as beer, ready-to-drink spirits, and wine, are the profit margins for MBLL the same for all of those? And basically where I'm leading into that, we see a difference in trends in liquor consumption that you've stated. We've seen an increase in ready to drink, right? That seems to be popular, and the liquor companies are catering towards that. With every time we go to a liquor store, we see more coolers and those ready to serve type drinks. And obviously, people are spending less on their spirits, wine, and especially beer. What does the profit margin to the Crown Corporation on each of those look like?
Mr. Sewell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As noted, again, we've seen continued decline across all categories, with the exception for refreshment beverages. Again, as you start, there's two parts to it. Are people consuming they're not consuming at all, or is it people moving from other products? So if they're moving from beer to refreshment beverages, that would be kind of, obviously a benefit to us from a margin perspective, because again, the markup is 75% on the ad valorem markup is 75% on beer versus 95% on the refreshment beverages itself. But again, we're continuing to kind of, see that growth. It's been positive for the organization to see, refreshment beverages continue to grow. When we think of margins, and specifically margins, if we look year over year, and I've got, the 10-year trends, we've seen margins increase across all categories of beverage alcohol, with the exception of beer. And the reason being is because of our dedicated support to the local craft manufacturer and industry. So it's the only product category where we're actually seeing a decline in our gross margin. And it's a result of the supports we provide to that industry.
Mr. North?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I think you were able to, or Honorable Chair, the CEO was able to give us a breakdown last year of what the profitability between retail and wholesale on beer, spirits, and ready to serve. And just for comparison, year after year, I'm curious to see if that's remained the same, or as you alluded to, that some have increased, with the exception of beer. So would the CAO be able to state what those profit margins are?
Mr. Sewell?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So if we kind of look at in its entirety across all categories, we went from 51% gross margin to 52% gross margin in this last year. If we look at it by category, I could tell you that beer went down from 40.4 down to 39.9. Ready to drink went up 52.2 to 53.3% gross margin. Spirits have climbed from 62.8 to 63.5. Wine grew from 53.6 up to 54.2. So again, earlier I had mentioned the fact that we're seeing growth in our gross margin percentage, with the exception for beer.
Mr. North?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. And again, for clarification, when we talk gross margin, is that the cost from the actual supplier to what retail is on the shelf at your local liquor mart, or does that include some other costs in there? Because I think we had numbers last year of spirits being 150% profit margin from cost to retail without any other costs associated, and wine was lower, somewhere around 100. I have it here, but 100%, and then beer lower from there. So just to clarify that we're comparing apples to apples.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. For clarity, again, there's an ad valorem markup, that's applied to the duty paid landed cost. That ad valorem markup is 153% for spirits, 95% for refreshment beverages, 75% for beer, and 95% for wine.
Mr. North?
Honorable Chair, yeah, that answers that precisely. So I thank you for that. Would the CEO be able to answer, Honorable Chair, what the cost of operation for liquor stores across the province are for MBLL? And this can be either a percentage of sale, or it would be hard to be a dollar value, I realize that, but a percentage cost of operation for liquor mart stores.
Honorable Minister.
Yeah, as the President and CEO goes through his work to be able to get you those figures, I think the most important part that we have to remember here is that the offerings that we have to Manitobans are housed and delivered by a network of various stores at various ages, at various stages, at various sizes, with various staff, that each store is different. The store that you see in Nepal will be different than the store you see in Steinbach. And then when as they are costed out and developed, I think the important part that we always have to keep in mind is the type of service that's being offered. The people that make those stores to be the vision to be have these high returns and be these excellent businesses to be, or corporation to be able to provide a really high quality service to Manitobans, but also safely. And when we look at these stores and we look at the various sizes, the smaller one in Brandon to the larger one on Grant Park or what have you, that there's always one thing that's constant, that the people and the service and the delivery that you get in those stores is of the highest quality. And with renewed focus and reestablishing positive labor relations, to having a pride for working for MBLL, for taking the time to go to work and enjoying yourself there and know that the corporation is investing in the people, I think that those costs can be overlooked, that the cost and the returns that you get from those costs are beneficial to Manitobans. So when you try to boil it down to a specific number, a number that you can say per square foot or heating costs or electrical or electricity costs, you can't overlook those, that what we're talking about is a face-to-face enterprise of humans who make a difference. And when the costs that are associated with running a liquor mart are also juxtaposed against the profits and net rendering to the province that goes to healthcare, I think that it's also seen as an investment. And that's what I think that the MBLL can be proud of, is the fact that it provides a very high quality service in its liquor marts to Manitobans, that it can pride itself on having progressive and positive relationship with liquor vendors and the protection of their territory and the development of positive relationships, and to be innovative in the way that it offers these products to people. And I always want to be able to come back to this, that the costs that are associated with running a liquor mart also have to take into account the future investment and social responsibility initiatives that are undertaken by the corporation. The investments in community support, in arts, in the artist community in Manitoba, to the point where Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries can be an award-winning, nationally recognized corporation that actually invests in people and invests in Manitoba. So as providing the time to the President and CEO to gather his response, and we'll give you a dollar figure that might be able to be whittled down to a square foot or cost per store, what you're searching for. I would caution any of those dollars to be considered in the fact that the impact that it has on people and the impact it has on communities.
Mr. Sewell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think, the question, was about kind of profitability, and specifically trying to isolate our specific liquor marts. So, what I can isolate the fact is if we looked at just liquor mart stores, less cost of sales, again, that gross profit margin, is 59% specifically for liquor marts. When you get below that in the equation of working your way to, the net operating income of the organization, this is where we get into the complexities of there are so many shared costs. And unfortunately, the organization doesn't break it down to that level of granularity or detail as to, how do we partition off the costs of what portion goes to the liquor mart, what portion goes of that service to a liquor vendor or a hotel beer vendor or a specialty wine store. Again, we don't parse it out, to that level of detail to be able to give you a specific net income statement for liquor marts, in isolation, versus a liquor vendor versus a specialty wine store. Again, there's so many things like, that have blended costs, whether it's outbound freight, that, everybody benefits, everybody's on that same truck. So we're shipping out a truck of product, stopping at a couple liquor vendors in your jurisdictions, it's stopping at, maybe at a hotel beer vendor, it's stopping, maybe at a couple of liquor marts. Again, how do you partition out, those freight costs, to be able to come up with an accurate net operating income specifically to liquor marts? So what I'm saying is it's very difficult and near impossible because we don't have that kind of record keeping or that level of record keeping to isolate. What I can isolate specifically, what I said in the beginning was from a gross profit margin, 59% is the gross profit margin when you look at liquor mart sales less cost of sales.
Mr. Narth?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. And with time being limited, I'd just like to make a couple comments to the committee and to the board and Minister. I appreciate the Minister's comments. I think, like I say, as I've had the opportunity in the last year to connect with many of the retailers that are part of the Manitoba Liquor Vendor Association. I think it would be fair to state, as we say, that we provide jobs, MBLL provides jobs that are well-paid, fair to people that are passionate about providing this service to Manitobans. I don't think that we can ignore the half, and we've stated that half of them are delivered through a unique model, a public-private blended model, which we've stated here today that those vendors haven't seen an increase in their share in the market in a number of years. We don't know what that number of years is, but it's a number of years. So leaving here today on liquor operations, the minister and the department, together with the CEO, what reassurance are we providing to the model as a whole? Because half of liquor sales are done through that private model, that we see sustainability. Same reason that people deserve fair pay in the public model. How are we reassuring Manitobans that half of that revenue, which is a substantial amount of money going back to the coffers of the province, to healthcare and the rest, that we are supporting that other side of the model so that there is future sustainability in liquor sale and distribution, allowing stores, whether they be the Ellis Liquor Mart or the small town liquor store, that they are selling a wide range of product that is providing selection to Manitobans while still being responsible to the social impacts that can have on individuals and the community. Whether it be the person that's working at the Grant Park Liquor Mart or the private liquor store, these are people that are going home contributing to their families and their communities. So what reassurance and what future plans does MBLL have in tying the model more closely together, that it's considered a partnership instead of an avenue of income?
Well,
Honorable Minister?
I would just say that when MBLL succeeds and private liquor vendors succeed, Manitoba succeeds. And when we talk about the fact that private vendors have liquor as not their primary area of business, that we recognize the value that is brought to those communities when they have robust and thriving businesses that are outside of the liquor vendor business. And when we have increased investments in roads, highways, educational institutions, because of the success of the corporation, everybody succeeds. And the models that you suggest, or the partnerships that you suggest, I would say that MBLL does a extremely strong job of providing product to those shelves, to provide technology support, to provide distribution, to provide quality product, to provide partnership, to be able to use their buying power as a corporation to get these products to market. And that the capitalism of liquor is always benefited with the fact that we have one of the strongest corporations in the world.
Seeing no further questions, I will now put the question on the report. Shall the annual report on the Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries Corporation for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2024, shall the report accordingly pass? Pass. The report is accordingly passed, the hour being 3:32. What is the will of the committee? Committee rise.